Fish on First has partnered with About the Fans to launch a merchandise collection. Rep the FOF logo and more Marlins-inspired apparel. Find it all at aboutthefans.com. Enter coupon code FOF10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. FOF10 for a 10% discount.
This is Griffin Conan.
This is Xavier Edwards.
This is Liam Hicks.
This is Dave Myers, and you're watching Fish on First Live.
Fish on First Live, presented by our merch partners at About the Fans. We appreciate their support, coming up with Marlins-inspired apparel, as well as our own Fish on First logos on our hats, t-shirts, etc. You could shop over there, scrolling across the bottom of the screen at aboutthefans.com. Use the promo code FOF10, FOF10 to get yourself a discount. I'm Eli Sussman, of course. I'm starting off in a bit of a sour mood. I forgot that Dane was the last one during that intro video, and it'll be a big focus on this show, the loss of Dane Myers to the IL for the foreseeable future. Joined by Kevin Burrell, Nate Karsmer, Alex Carver, special guest, and somebody that I've chatted back and forth with on Twitter the last couple of months, Tyler Baronsky. He is a great independent content creator here in South Florida, including a whole lot of Marlins stuff. And I'm glad that we could have you on here directly, Tyler, to talk ball with us.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me. You know, I've gotten to know some of you guys at the ballpark and then some of you guys online through Twitter. So it's nice to connect, on the live stream. I know we've been trying to make this happen for a little bit, so we're able to make it work for this Cup series. So happy to be on.
Yeah, you come here at like the absolute worst time because for all the optimism that there's been occasionally at times.
This is bad
for the Marlins.
This might be my only appearance then on the show at this rate. It looks like it.
Right.
Right now, yeah.
So the series predictions that we do before every show with our staff and our stream guests and our super subs, usually there's some sort of division in terms of how we think the series is going to play out. In this case, everybody had this White Sox series circled as the milestone where this schedule got easier, where things lightened up a bit after a very challenging first quarter of the season. They go in to visit the team that set the all-time losses record just last season, and they end up losing 2 out of 3 in this one. Only very bottom, you see, that is I think that's Ricardo Urasuno who actually got that right. One guy who went with the White Sox to win the series. But Tyler, even around this team heading into the year, expectations relatively low, and then the first few weeks of the season they overachieved and a lot of good vibes going around. But I think this is the official coming down to earth moment, isn't it? When you face a team like the White Sox and competitive games, but end up losing 2 out of 3. That's a big kick in the nuts, I would say.
Well, it hurt because you thought you were better than, a team like the White Sox. We know what the expectations were, but we thought, maybe we're a tier above in terms of the bottom half of the league. But obviously when you leave, runners in scoring positions the way they did, first game on Friday, 1 for 15, even the game Saturday when they won, which they could have easily lost that one, still 1 for 12 there. So you finally get something from the rotation, some strong performances from the bullpen, actually. But of course, the strength this year for the Marlins, the hitting, just really was quiet this time around for the White Sox series. So definitely a frustrating one, disappointing, and really you have to evaluate where you really are as a team. And, maybe some of the players now moving forward. I know Matt Murphys has been a conversation online and others that maybe we got to be shuffling the roster soon. So that's where we're at.
Right. Take us through some of the more particulars on this one, Nate, from this series, where both in the first game and the last game, sort of controversial starting pitching decisions, especially in that first one, where the Marlins had this pattern of pulling the plug on their starters relatively early in the previous series. And then especially on Friday with Max on the mound, that may have been an overcorrection, right? Where he stays in a tie game, bottom of the 7th inning, ends up having what was tied for the longest start by a Marlin this year. But things snowballed really quickly as he goes deep the third time through that lineup. It was a rough week overall for Clayton McCullough in terms of trying to get his finger on the pulse of exactly when to make that really important call to the bullpen.
Yeah, just the day after a lot of us came on here and we're scrutinizing Clayton for taking out Cal and Valente Bayoza too early, myself included. Max delivered a great start, except for a little wacky second inning, but he was really efficient all day. I believe he averaged 12 pitches an inning up until that Rocky one, and he just he lost all his command. He started to hit around a little bit, and usually I was expecting Clayton to take him out a little bit earlier, and he left him in. And he left him in just long enough before Jacob Maya could boost up his OPS past 200 with a bunt single RBI. So that wasn't too fun. But he did look, definitely a step forward for his past ones. Not quite his early season form like we saw against the Reds, but definitely a step forward for Max. And like Tyler said, that first game, man, brutal with runners in scoring position. They scored 2 batters into the game after Xavier Edwards and Jesus Sanchez manufactured run on their own, and that was pretty much it. I do have to point out, home plate umpire Austin Jones was abysmal. Clayton almost got tossed for the first time. Also worth noting that Augustine Ramirez in that whack, I think it was the 6th it was the 7th when Max was started to blow up. He stood up and just defended his pitcher. So you love to see that. Kyle pointed out on the broadcast that your young catcher has been in the lead for about 2 or 3 weeks now, standing up for a starter. You love to see that. But that was a tough one. Saturday was looking like the same thing. Again, abysmal as far as scoring position. I think it was 0 for 8 before Eric Weideman stepped to the box in the top of the 8th with the lowest win probability added amongst qualified players. So he was the least clutch player in the lead. And of course, he up and rips his first career triple. I don't know how he got there, especially with you guys saw the way he was running to first yesterday, but he made it and he put the Marlins ahead. Also worth noting that Kyle Stowers broke out of his mini slump there with the solo homer in the 7th. Eddie was good. Another step forward for him. He did not use his fastball once. He was sinker, slider, changeup, and it worked out. Showed better command. He's going to have another chance to improve and take another step forward against the Rays this coming week. They're not hitting too well right now. So overall, embarrassing, I would say, especially against the Sox. I really didn't have that many high expectations for this team coming into the year. First couple of weeks got me a little bit excited, but I think they're right back down to earth. Kevin talked about it for a while that, they might be coming back down to earth. And I think, like you said, Eli, they've officially came back down. Losing a series of the White Sox is not what you want to see. But, yeah, also worth noting, Javier Sanoja had a great second game. Amazing play up the middle and a couple hits. So if Xavier Edwards continues to struggle like we've been talking about, even though he won MVP, he had a great series. But if we didn't get Javi and X in this lineup, it's going to be good moving forward.
Yeah, you kind of stole Kevin's word. I thought he picked it out previously that he was going to go with embarrassing to describe all things. I guess I'll get your take, Kevin, just on Sandy, because this was another date where you circle and you're like, if Sandy can't get it going here, then when will he be able to? Mixed results here, where his velo was as high as we've seen all year long, and he only allowed 1 run those first 5 innings. With him, it ends up being just one big mistake in that 6th inning, allowing a home run to a guy that had just made his major league debut in Tim Elko. So it's been a few weeks of this where we're trying to decide, is this a real step forward? When at the end of the day, like, it's still a very ugly ERA, and it still leaves the mound with some bad feelings. But yeah, I guess more good than bad in this one.
That's probably the best way to put it. More good than bad. I think you look at his last 2 starts, and it's thrillingly 3 pitches that have not been good. And it was the 2 home runs against the Dodgers, and then the Tim Elko one, which I think it was a new pitch that he was working on with a new grip. He wasn't telling, saying in the post-game press conference or the post-game scrum. So, yeah, it was just an interesting start. Still walking a little bit too many guys. I didn't watch the whole start. I didn't exactly see how many guys maybe stole off of him, but that's something that we knew. He's just not good at, good with runners on, or not good at containing those runners, better said. But again, this goes to one of those starts where your offense needs to perform better, regardless of what the start looked like. There's no way that the Marlins should be putting up 1 run against the Chicago White Sox. There's no way they should be losing 2 out of 3 against the White Sox. And Nate said it, he took it from me. This was an embarrassing series for the Marlins. This is as bad as it gets. You should not be losing to, Shane, whatever his name is, Shane Smith or Cam Boozer. You shouldn't be losing to, no offense, a team that you're better than. And I still believe the Marlins are better than the White Sox. Aside from whatever, I know the series spoke for itself, but they took 2 out of 3 against the Red Sox a couple weeks back, at the start of the season. So the Marlins are still a better team, but you can't lose this series. There's 2 teams you should not lose to, and those are the Chicago White Sox and the Colorado Rockies. And the Marlins already obviously did that once. And yeah, this is a bad series for the Marlins. Just bad. You can't do, Tyler mentioning that the runners in scoring position, that was an issue. That was a massive issue because obviously the bats were there. They had 7 hits in the first game, 7 hits in every game. You can't lose to the White Sox like this. And it was an embarrassing performance, unfortunately. And it goes back to just certain decisions that Clayton McCullough makes. You had the decision with Sandy to keep him in there, which I think at the time, you look back maybe 2 years ago in 23, you would have done that. Maybe not this year with how he's been doing. And then Max going out there for that, I believe it was the 7th. You know, you like that. You like that decision. You ride with her. You rode with your guy. I guess if you want to say it like that, you went with your guy and just didn't work. And you know what? You appreciate those decisions, but at the same time, sometimes if you really want to win a game and Marlins had a chance to take the series, you have to make the right decision. And I don't think Clayton did that.
I think to piggyback off what Kevin said about grips and pitch usage, if you look at Fangraphs and look at the underlying metrics on how this guy's pitches are benefiting or not benefiting the Marlins, every one of his 4 pitches has a negative WAR right now. So the fastball has a negative 2.9, the slider has a negative 1.3, the curveball a negative 1.1, which he's trying to incorporate curveball more, and the changeup a negative 1.2. So you look at this red and blue on your screen. These are the reasons why. My question is, coming out of 2023, obviously he didn't pitch last year. Coming out of 2023, he had one of the highest WARs on his fastball, a decent 2.1 on slider, okay 0.3 on curveball, which he didn't throw a lot, and the changeup was still kind of work in progress, but he kind of lived off of that fastball slider combo. Why are the Marlins? I understand it for a lot of guys that it is a less effort pitch to go with the sweeper than your traditional slider. Why are they trying to fix what's not broken with Sandy Alcantara? That's something I had that question when Sandy originally said it to some of the reporters, like that he's switching to more of a sweeper. And I still have that question now, because why are you trying to change a Cy Young Award winner? So I understand it from a player development perspective. I understand it from prospect perspective, but when this player is already a Cy Young Award winner, why are you trying to fix something that's not broken? So I think that's a mistake. I think that's where a lot of Sandy's issues lie. It's in the fact that they're trying to redo his slider, which was already one of the best pitches in baseball. You can see that he's not fooling guys. He's getting way less swings out of the strike zone. He's having to come into the strike zone a lot more. And that's why his contact rates are up on all of his pitches. And that's why those WARs on every single pitch that he's throwing are down, well down. So I don't really get why they would try to change what Sandy was doing. Yes, he had Tommy John. Yes, the game changes every day. We get that. But this guy was just fine with slider, fastball, changeup, and even, I guess, mixing curveball. And they just kind of redid him. And I don't really think it was for a good reason. So I don't know. I think that's kind of an interesting topic to go to is to why they tried to, maybe a good question for the pitching coach. Why did you try to revamp Sandy when he didn't really need it?
I guess one other positive I really wanted to mention, sorry, Nate. The one positive I did want to take from this is that Sandy surpassed 100 pitches. So now it's not an issue of an innings limit or a pitch limit. Now it's just like what Carver said. Like, why are you trying to change what wasn't broken? And I know they're adding this one pitch, that sweeper, to everyone in the organization. It's not just Sandy, but there's certain guys you don't do that to. Like, if you're on the, I don't even know, like, think of the best. If you're not going to tell Paul Skeens to change this right now, and I know I'm mentioning the best pitcher in baseball, but like that, I'm not saying Sandy is, but he's up there for one of the better pitchers in baseball overall. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're changing a little bit too much. The fastball's there. I think he's throwing the changeup a little bit less, or if not, that's the second most used pitch. I don't know why he isn't going with slider a bit more. They also need to maybe define which one, I guess on Savant, which one's slider, which one's sweeper, which they haven't done that yet. But it's just a weird usage that he has so far. And I know he didn't throw the changeup a lot in that start against the White Sox. So maybe that was an issue. And I know he noted it wasn't his best pitch, but still, I mean, you go with that overall in his career, that's been his best pitch. And you got to go with it.
Carver, I apologize. My internet went out. I thought you stopped talking. But I did want to say that the base running the series was also quite abysmal. They got picked off at second plenty of times. I don't know, especially with Clayton as a at first base coach many years. The fact you keep running on that catcher when he threw you out plenty of times, it really, especially when they couldn't start rallies like that and just had no situational hitting whatsoever, it was kind of mind-boggling to me. And then also Nick Fortes getting picked off at third base.
That was terrible.
In the middle of the 2-out rally, especially as a catcher. You don't see that coming. I think that the poor situational everywhere, hitting on the base, running on the bases, it really showed this series. And Kevin, I don't know if the Marlins are better than the White Sox at this point. It reminds me of that scene from Bad News Bears when they're talking. It's like, oh, we just lost to the worst team in the league. And the kid's like, well, second worst, because it might be them. So I think just the way things have gone from the past. I mean, honestly, entering May, it's been pretty bad. So they've certainly come back down to earth, and that's just what I'm trying to say.
And as bad as the White Sox are, like there's certain like the one thing that is a positive for them has been the catching. Like they have Matt Tice has been pretty good. I'm pretty sure Edgar Caro. You have Kyle Teal coming up. Like Nate said it. That was really bad. Especially the Fortes one was the worst one of all. Like how you're down. You don't get off the third base that far. Like just honestly, this was a terrible series for the Marlins. And I don't usually say that, but this was a genuinely terrible series for the Marlins. Shout out Edward Cabrera. He's really good.
Not to go too long on Sandy, but I know he's a hot topic because of everything that could happen with him. Just as I called out before, like swing percentage inside the strike zone is down to 69%, whereas last year on the whole year, of course, we're looking at a smaller sample right now. On the whole year last year, 73%, year before 72, year before 72. So even his ability to get swings inside the strike zone is gone because guys are just waiting him out. I don't really think it's a zone problem. I just think it's a usage issue. Guys are just waiting for those deep counts, forcing him inside the zone, then taking their licks. I think that just is what it is with this pitcher, is that they tried to change him into something that I don't think that he really is. And there really, I don't think was a reason to do that, in my opinion, because of how good he was the last time that he pitched. As I said, of course, the game changes. Of course, the organization is going to have a certain philosophy, but this guy was perfectly fine the way he was. And I think they tried to change something they shouldn't have changed.
Well, it's an interesting point because, I mean, like you said, Alex, like a lot has been made with the new change in the philosophy, obviously throwing less fastballs and, throwing more off-speed stuff, but it really has felt like copy and paste for every pitcher. Now it's helped for guys like Edward Cabrera and actually pitching to contact. And, obviously you saw the last start, Nate mentioned how kind of the four seams was not used as much or eliminated as a whole. But yeah, you don't mess with a former Cy Young Award winner. And that's the thing. It's just a lot of feels like copy and paste with everyone. Everyone's having the sweeper, like Kevin mentioned. So that's the weird part to me. You can have a general change in philosophy if that's what they really want to go with, whether you agree with it or not. But it seems like it's just the same approach with every guy. And obviously we know that just doesn't work.
It'd be interesting to get inside the room where some of these discussions were had entering the season, just because Sandy publicly has been a good soldier. Like he is not at all. We've seen on other teams, Rafael Devers, for example, in Boston, and other cases where that behind stuff, if there are disagreements about that intention, it can bubble over. In Sandy's case, he has never deflected blame to the coaching staff. Where they also have a new director of pitching, Bill Hiesel. It's his first year. Daniel Moscas, who we haven't referenced, he is the pitching coach. It's his first time as a full-time pitching coach, but he has never thrown them under the bus. You would think that if he had a strong conviction about not making changes, that they would have left him alone. So it's a little puzzling in that way, where the bigger trends do point to an issue with the pitching approach. The fact that as a whole, they have allowed the most, I think they've still allowed, maybe now just below the Rockies, the second most runs in the big leagues. They have allowed the most walks in the entire big leagues, Sandy included. But with a lot of these guys leaning so heavily on their non-fastballs has been more difficult to control and led to all these walks that bubble over into big innings when they finally give up a hit. So it's a really murky subject. But overall, this was like a better week for their pitching staff than we'd seen recently with a lot of these guys. It's just that still their start to finish is always like something that goes haywire, whether it's taking out the starter too early and then one of the relievers blows up, or in the case of this series, a couple instances where the pitcher was doing really well, and then as he gets that third time through the order, something goes haywire, and all of a sudden his final line looks really mediocre, all things considered.
Yeah, Marlins right now have the highest walk per nine in baseball as a pitching staff, and they have the second highest ERA in baseball. So they are a negative 0.1 FOR as a pitching staff this year. So that just tells you how bad it's been, and what should be a strength, and I think will end up being a strength at some point when they get Weathers back, which we'll talk about, and eventually Yuri Perez, and we begin to see Robbie Snelling, Adam Mazur, those guys come up. But man, right now it's just been so stressful and so frustrating because usually, I think we all went into the season thinking, if there's one thing that'll keep this team afloat, it'll be the pitching, not the offense. And so far it's been the offense, and it's frustrating because Sandy is really good. And Edward Cabrera has the stuff. Kyle Quantrill's just going to eat innings at this point, and you didn't think it'd be this bad. Looked a lot better recently. And then you thought you were finally going to start getting some of these pieces, and obviously the Weathers injury was a tough blow, but it shouldn't be as bad as it's been. And you thought the bullpen would hold its own, which it hasn't. So it's been rough. It's certainly been rough. Decision making maybe has been a big issue with that. Maybe, and something that we've spoken about in our chat has been just the mound visits have been so random and so just like weird when they do them. Like the Cal Quantrill ones, the one I remember the most. Like, why aren't you going up there before he's facing Juan Soto? Like, come on. So that was one of them. And I don't know. Then the bullpen management has certainly been something, like going with Cade Gibson to face Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, and Freddie Freeman. Like, no offense to Cade Gibson, but you go with someone else in that situation. So those are just the ones that obviously stand out, and it's been a bumpy ride. I don't think we expected this team to be good, of course, but when you're somehow overachieving, and as they were, and I think, and honestly, they still are in some cases, like you expected a little more.
Yeah. Before, we don't want to dedicate the entire show to this topic, so I should transition to the Dane Myers injury. We brought up the base running in the previous series. So one way where it was also disastrous is Dane got hurt I think he did successfully steal seconds, and then he stayed in the game. He ended up scoring the run. Maybe they should have taken him out at that moment. I don't know how much he may have aggravated it going from second to home later that inning, but he's on the IL with a very familiar injury. It's an oblique strain, the same injury that Connor Norby had, that Jesus Sanchez had, that Nick Fortes. Did I say Nick Fortes? No, Nick Fortes as well. He's on the list too.
Yeah,
if you want to go to the minor league side, Jacob Marcy had an oblique strain in spring training. In all these cases, they were actually relatively short absences, all of them like 3 to 4 weeks. So we'll hear today, probably already heard, we'll hear secondhand, I guess, what severity the strain was, but it's going to be more than the minimum of 10 days here. I'll go to Nate just on the absence of Dane, because he's 29 years old. He's the guy that spent so much of his professional career as a pitcher, and it just delayed his run through the minor leagues. Once he switched to hitting, things turned around, but he was blocked a little bit on this roster a couple years ago. Last year, he hurt himself out of frustration and missed time. So he's already so far along in his athletic career, but finally he was getting a chance to play every day, and he was performing at an amazing level. And now just another frustrating setback right here for him. Even if it's relatively short term, they finally seem to have figured out center field. And as soon as one center field option comes back, and Derek Hill all of a sudden now they're downgrading. All due respect to Derek Hill, it's a bit of a blow to this defensive configuration, and definitely to the offense, to go from Dane to Hill in this case.
I don't think there's any other word you can use besides brutal. Like you said, he finally got his chance. He was starting, multiple games in a row after getting the short end of the stick through the first month, a couple weeks, and he gets hurt. Like you said, I believe they should have taken him out after he came up wobbly at second. I know you really can't say for sure if that did affect it, but especially with a guy that's been the second best hitter in your lineup, arguably the best, especially that Stowers started to slow down. I don't agree with that decision. But it really does suck, especially really starting to find at the plate with consistent playing time, which he's been deserving. And he talked to Kevin about it, that even when he wasn't having consistent playing time, he still just wanted to do everything he can to help the team win. He's a great guy in that clubhouse, and they're going to miss him, especially with the way a lot of the bats in the lineup have been slumping. You lose, like I said, probably your best bat right now, and not even at the plate on the bases. Like you said, he actually was one of few Marlins to steal a bases past series, and very good in center. Now you have to, I think Kyle Stowers got the start in center yesterday, so now you have to rotate between those two. But Derek Hill coming back does help you out a little bit. But it really just does suck for a guy like Dane. Hopefully it will be around 10 days or so to get him back, so he won't be gone for too long. But like you said, he's 29. He only debuted 2 years ago. But I don't want to say the clock's ticking on him, but when you keep hurting yourself or just these oblique strains, man, they add up. So it does suck, and I really I wish him the best, and I hope it's quick.
Can I just call out one stat on this player? And I love this guy. Super nice guy. Just kind of a late bloomer, like you said, especially as a hitter. But high leverage, 385, 539, right? With 4 stolen bases. Like, had a home run as well. That big home run had a double. This guy was doing it all, and now he's going to miss extended time. I think on this team he could have been an all-star. Was Sandy struggling? I think this could have been the Marlins all-star, honestly. And now that's probably going to be gone, which really sucks. And I'm sure that he knows it as well. But this guy did everything he needed to do to play himself into more playing time, to be a full-timer. And then he gets that chance, and not long into it, he's out with an injury. I mean, yeah, it's an interesting topic to talk about. in terms of conditioning because we've seen this same injury so many times. Like what's being done now, in terms of their warm up, what's being done now in terms of their conditioning that is allowing this injury to happen so many times. Is it just a coincidence? Maybe. I don't know. But to me, a trend spells some kind of smoke and fire somewhere, right? So I would venture to ask what has changed this year to allow this specific injury to happen this often. Maybe it's something they're doing differently in warmups. Maybe it's something they're doing differently in practice, batting practice. I don't know. Those are questions we would have to ask. But like I said, where there's smoke, there's usually fire. So I don't know for a fact. Again, it's a question we'd have to ask. But yeah, for this same injury to happen so often, especially to now what is a starting player, and I think was the best player on the team, especially recently, is very unfortunate.
Yeah, like I think Eli would be the best one to tell us. Like every year feels like it's like a certain injury that happens to this damn team. Like a couple years ago is the back injury, another year was like a shoulder injury. Like like what is it, man? Like yeah, it's tough. And then as Eli noted, you got Derek Hill back, who just to be clear, like he played 4 games in his rehab assignment, and 3 of them were DHing. So he only played center field once, which I found very odd. And he was not very good in his rehab starts at all. Like he was really bad. He I think had 1 or 2 hits. But hey, look, at the end of the day, you're getting a pretty good defensive player back. Like he's gonna play center, and he's a decent center fielder. I don't think he's great, but man, like he was not off to a good start whatsoever offensively this season. Maybe this time off helped him out a little bit. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, it's a guy who's going to strike out a lot. You're hoping that you get some sort of pop in there, but and to be honest, like there's no better alternative in AAA right now because VMJ's still hurt. Like that would have been your guy. Albert Almora's hitting under the Mendoza line, and you probably don't want to start the clock on a Marcy or a Pintar unless you're sure that those guys are going to come up. So yeah, it's certainly a tough loss of Dane, as Carver noted, and Nate, just like a guy who finally found himself back in everyday playing time, which I'm curious to see what would have happened if this wasn't the move, and if he was there with Derek Hill, what would have happened? Probably a platoon situation again, like because it took him so long to start playing again, and it was partially due to the Derek Hill injury why he's back out there, playing every day, and now he gets hurt. And Carver mentioned he probably had a good case to be the representative for this team on the All-Star game. Probably wasn't going to be my top choice because you had Stowers and Max Meyer and what they were doing. But yeah, this is, first of all, we'll see what happens with Derek Hill. And then obviously a huge, huge loss with Dane and how cool and, his story has been this year and what he had been doing. It's definitely a tough loss, especially now when you're finally going into a quote unquote easier part of the season. Although no part's easy, to be clear.
Yeah. And we appreciate everybody out there trying to fill us in on oblique strains. There's a veteran sports journalist turned medical professional on Twitter who has shared repeatedly some of his ideas about this Marlins issue going back to spring training. It has happened repeatedly, though. It is a very rough look, especially for all these guys that are really like younger guys too. It's a young team. It's arguably the youngest team in baseball. Guys that you would think are not as susceptible to soft tissue injuries as older players might be on other clubs. I don't know. It's very frustrating, though. Wishing Dana a swift recovery right here. Well, before we get into weathers in this upcoming series, we did finally put out our updated FOF top 30 list for the top prospects in the Miami Marlins organization. 4 out of the 5 contributors to this are right here with us, only missing Isaac Azout as well, as determined. We had talks about this last week and then ironed it out over the weekend. So, yeah, it's going to be updated on the site as well for people to see the scouting reports on these guys and the changes that were made from the previous list. We just want to touch on a few of them here and also hear feedback from Tyler and others in the chat about where we're right, where we're wrong, because other outlets, of course, have their own takes on the top prospects in this organization. Thomas White has been number 1 now for a full calendar year since the first update of 2024 right here. Continuing to do nothing to hurt that stock as he climbs through this organization. I think right below that, though, it's a very interesting conversation between Augustine and Joe Mack. We'll go to Kevin on that about, Mack in particular, because he's one of the biggest risers on this list from our preseason one. And he was already a top 10 guy in this organization, but it seems that he's only got better this year for somebody that had all the awards last year, the MVP of Pensacola. He won a minor league Gold Glove. But now he's up in Jacksonville and he's continuing to rake right here, despite being one of the youngest guys at that level.
Yeah, it was that top 6. Honestly, that was like the biggest conversation for us. After that, it was just a little bit of mixing and matching any additions we wanted to make. But like, I made the case that you could put Joe Mack over Augustin in this case, just Mack with his defense being the more complete prospect. But then you have Augustin, who's it's a safe hit tool. It's a hit tool that's been pretty consistent throughout his minor league career, and it's showing it off in the at the major league level. And obviously you don't want to you take into account what he's done at the major league level, but that's not the whole story of everything. And his defense has still been not great. It's improving. It looks better than what I expected, to be honest with you, at the major league level. But Joe Mack, what he's doing, man, and what he's doing at this age, that's 22, 21, like he's so good, man. And there's a reason why he was the biggest riser on the Baseball America Top 100. Have no clue why he's not in the pipeline top 100. That was a terrible decision. You could have made the case to put him second on this list. And honestly, he probably will end up being second on this list because Augustin's probably going to graduate in about a month, maybe 2. And once we do this after the trade deadline, which I think that's when we'll do it next, like Joe Mack will be the number 2 prospect on this list unless the Marlins get like Marcelo Meyer or Roman Anthony on this team, which then we'll have a different conversation. But yeah, this was a tough one to do. Like we were on there for close to an hour, and even throughout the weekend, just trying to nail out the rest of this list, getting different opinions. Like it was a good list. I think this is a really good list. Probably the one that, and I was telling you guys, like not even 2 years ago, we were having discussions about some really bad prospects, like top 5, and to make this list tougher and tougher to do is a good thing. And the longer we're on there, it's better. Sometimes it's tough because it's so bad, but sometimes it's tough because you have a lot of good prospects. And I think that was the case. And it started right there at number 2, as you noted, Eli.
Just to give you one example about how the farm system has changed, entering 2024, Jacob Amaya was, I think, top 10 in this system. And now he's the worst. Yeah, unfortunately, he is the worst hitter at the major league level with the White Sox right now. And yeah, so the Marlins, even though they sold low on him, you kind of understand why in hindsight right here. Carver, we got your guy Leomar Martinez. He snuck into the top 30 right here. I mean, without diving too deep onto this, anybody in particular, any names that are kind of in the lower half of the list that you think could continue to rise a lot as the season goes on?
Yeah, no, really like Shepherdson. That's a guy that I've continued to be high on. I was kind of high on him out of the draft. He was a 5th round pick. I was pretty high on him. He didn't pitch because of like a finger issue or something. Plus the FCL wasn't happening at that time when he came out. So they needed to, either send him to Jupiter or shut him down. They shut him down with that finger issue. For real slider. Me and Kevin saw it in spring training. The slider's so good. Velo's decent. It's mid-90s velo. It's decent. I really, really like that pitcher. I don't know. I hope they start to work him out as a starter. I think they're kind of just working him out as a reliever to kind of get him built back up. But I think he's a starter. I think he's good. So I really like Shepherdson. Ackness speaks for himself. That guy's nasty. He's up to 101. He's sick. Really, really high on his ability to be a future high leverage reliever, possibly this season. I had him in the call-up contest. I think we could see him this season before long. I really like Ackness. Aiden May, unfortunately, we won't see him all season, but we did hear that he had really good stuff in spring training. So that's a name to keep an eye out for next season as he goes through his rehab. I really have high hopes for that kid. Also didn't pitch last year and now is not going to pitch this year. He's on a 60-day, which sucks, but had a good spring from what I heard. That's a four pitch guy already. I think that he's super solid. I don't think the missed year obviously sucks, but I think that he's going to be able to come back just fine. Fenwick Trimble, just a guy that kind of came, it was kind of a later round pick. He is playing kind of, I guess I would say, under his average age. But he has been really good so far this year. Really nothing against what he's doing with the bat. It's looked really good with his bat. So yeah, I mean, we had no reason not to rank him over the guys that we kind of, had that were there over him in top 30. But yeah, that guy's hitting 290 with an 843 OPS. I think he plays all 3 outfield spots. So I think he could be at least a decent bench piece, if nothing else. Kind of want to see it against older competition before we say too much on him. But it's looked good so far. So those are kind of the lower end guys. We kind of know about the guys over that. I mean, I guess I could just call out Kova. I was surprised that he wasn't an FCL, but I guess it is what it is. I don't even know if we've seen, I don't even know like what's going on with him. Is he hurt? I don't know, but I know he's in the DSL, so I guess we'll find out when that starts happening. So yeah, that was kind of my main surprise was Kova not being in the FCL. But they have a good squad there, and that team is already doing what they did last year with 17 more stolen bases already in 5 games, which is insane. So I really like the young talent in the system. A lot of those guys that are down there in the bottom of the list are there. Leomar, I've talked about him. I went full length on him. I don't have to go into that. But even at the lower ends of this list, you have good prospects. And as Kevin mentioned, I mean, in years past, these lower end 27, 28, 29 guys probably would have been top 5 in the system.
Yeah, and I'm looking at some of the comments. Less PJ hate this time around, which I appreciate. He definitely went up on our list. I mean, we made the case to move Carter Johnson down a little bit more. I think that's like a name that, man, he's just not been good. And I don't know how much of it is just overmatched early on, which could be the case, but just hasn't been able to hold it down. Probably needs to go to the FCL. I know I saw an Andres Valor comment that he's a little bit too high. I think he's just fine. Probably could have. I know Carver and I even made the case to potentially put him over Cerna on this list. We like what the tools are there. It's just been unlucky so far. I saw Carson Milbrandt was too low. I think he's just fine. Like maybe you could put him at 20 over Kova, but he's struggled a little bit, repeating high A for the 3rd straight year. And another newcomer to this list is Kemp Alderman, who's been awesome so far at Double A. Apologize, and the base running's a lot better. The power's there. He has a great arm. Just probably needs to improve the defense and the strikeout percentage is as low as it's ever been for someone like Alderman. So it's the improvements are there, and that was a name that we've been continuing to hear. Like he's going to be good. Like keep an eye out on him. And I know Carver heard that too. So yeah, and I think this is the first time in our ever, maybe in a couple of years at least, that we have 2 relievers on the top 30 with Eknes and Martinez. So good to see that those guys are getting some love. But I'm happy with the list. And I guess on the negative side, Noble took a huge dip on our list, which sucks, but just been struggling, man, and hasn't been great. The Velo's even dropped down to, I want to say 89, 92. Eli is what you were telling us. Like,
in his last start, in his like final ending of the list.
Still not good. Not good.
Now, a lot of these guys were in big league camp this spring, Tyler, so you may be aware of them. Anybody in particular that you're just excited to see maybe called up at some point later this year? Aside from Augustine, all these guys haven't debuted as Marlins yet, but we expect to see a handful of them at some point as this year goes on.
Yeah, I mean, Eknes was the one I would think of as well. I know also, as you guys are friends with, Jeremiah from Locked On Marlins, I know he's big on him as well. Definitely, major league ready with his arm. So I expect to see him soon. I agree with Kevin's point. I'm just looking at the list right now. I also would have put Joe Mack at 2 over Augustine. But obviously it's not a huge, gap there by any means, but I just, again, agree he's a more complete player. But yeah, in terms of like guys I could see, Eknes is the one that came to mind. I am curious, just as someone that's, still newer to this market, and obviously you guys, been following them even more, some of these names. How would you describe the gap between, Salas and Kaba? Like, how wide of a gap would you say that is with guys playing, similar positions?
I think there's a gap, like not huge. Like, those guys are extremely young. I think what's obviously the injury to Kaba sucks. So there's that, and Salas has just been awesome. Like, what Salas has done so far is as impressive as I think any of us could have expected, better than any of us could have expected. We expected maybe him to feel a little bit overmatched, which was the case early on. But and that's what we had number 2 at one point on our list, but we felt like maybe let's lower our expectations a little bit, see what's up. And there's a gap because Salas probably has a better hit tool than Kaba, in my opinion, right now, and it's obviously showing, and just the ability to get on base, the speed, which Kaba has, just hasn't been able to show to the fullest extent. There's a gap there, but it's not a big gap. I think the gap really starts like at 7, like after Dylan Head. There's probably a pretty big gap, and maybe after Cerna, there's another gap. Like that's kind of where we were kind of talking it out a little bit.
And that's what I was wondering too, was like where the next gap was. Like I was wondering also with Cerna and Augusta. I kind of knew, I kind of figured it'd probably be around there, but I was curious to hear if that was where your gap was as well.
I think precisely the gap that we had in this was after 8, after Mazer, because then you get to the stretch of all these guys that frankly have had bad seasons at this point, unfortunately. I mean, De Los Santos has been up and down, but you zoom out and he's a below average hitter who only plays first base and he's striking out a ton. We touched on Noble, and Cerna is one that I have a lot of faith in. But his numbers are just, they kind of speak for themselves. He's just not hitting for any power whatsoever and not finding gaps the way that he did last year. Andres Valor is somebody we were pretty high on entering this year, and we're staying calm for now, but it's been a rough transition for him as well to low A. Even Maximo Acosta, where he got off to a great start in AAA. There were people like first week of the season saying, maybe there's room for him on the big league team. And then his hitting just has taken a big downturn since then. So we tried to avoid any dramatic changes from just a couple months ago, but it is it's been an interesting mixed bag because as a whole, these minor league teams are winning a ton of games this year. It's just that a lot of that winning is actually coming from guys that aren't conventional top prospects. A lot of that like positive production is actually coming from surprising places. So Mac is one of the obvious exceptions. Salas, one of the obvious exceptions. And Snelling, there's been a lot more good than bad, but recently he had a couple starts that recently that kind of normalized his numbers again. Yeah, it's an interesting system to this point. And yeah, thankfully, aside from Augustine, so many of these guys are still going to be prospect eligible deep into this season. And then not that far away from having reinforcements come in from the draft, and then most likely even more from trades. Not the same huge wave as we saw last summer, but still, yeah, we wanted to get this update out there just because we know that there could be a whole lot of more names in the mix just a few weeks from now. So with that, let us transition quickly to this Cubs series. And we'll start off with Ryan Weathers right here, making his return. A guy that I think more so than anybody else in spring training got people excited, throwing harder than ever before, came in as a much slimmer version of himself. This is a photo from last year, but he's even thinner and trimmer this year. But still he just looked incredible throughout spring and was saying all the right things. And then right towards the end of spring suffers that flexor muscle strain, I think it was, and has finally made his way back from a rehab assignment right here. So before even getting into the lineups, Nate, let's just talk about Weathers, who he's had now a couple injuries each of the past 2 years, but when he's been available, he's slowly getting better. And at this point, this is a starting rotation that has been as bad as any in baseball this year. So this is a pretty sizable upgrade to have him plug in as he makes his debut on Wednesday.
Yeah, they've needed him for a while, and it comes at no better time than right now, especially with the way a lot of the other starters continue to struggle. Yeah, like you said, Eli, he had a great spring. Fastball was up there, and slider super continues to be great. Off speed's always been there for a guy like him. Like you said, it's just about him staying healthy. And if he can just stay healthy throughout these next couple of months, I think the Marlins have a legitimate ace on their hands with Ryan Weathers. I've always liked, even when he struggled in 23, the stuff has always been there. It was just about honing it really. So. Not also pitching, but holding guys on. Finally, a lefty that can actually hold runners on and hopefully trim down the stolen base that the Marlins have allowed this year. That will be a breath of fresh air after what we've watched for the past month and a half now. So it's going to be great. It's tough that his first test against a really good Cubs lineup, but I think he's going to settle in great. I'm not expecting him to go too far into that one, but like you said, I really can't say enough good things about this guy, and I think he's going to be a really, really welcome addition.
Yeah. He was, we think that he's going to plug right into the Valente Belloso rotation spot. That's going to be interesting discourse because Belloso lined up to go on Tuesday and against this Cubs team after dominating the Dodgers in his previous outing. But if you do the math and you realize that Cal Quantrill can't be sent down and Edward Cabrera can't be sent down and Sandy Alcantara can't be sent down and Max Meyer won't be sent down, then you just do the math and it's either do something goofy with a 6-man rotation, or Belloso might be the odd man out here. So it's a lot of pressure on Belloso too, if making it as hard a decision as he possibly can, depending on how he pitches in the middle game of this series.
Yeah, one more thing. The broadcast pointed out that to slim down, he drank salt water. I don't know if we've heard that in the spring, but I found that I just had to point that out. I've never heard that before.
I had never heard that in my life.
If it works, it works. So I guess we're going to see how saltwater Ryan Weathers does in Chicago on Wednesday.
Let us take a look at these lineups for the lineups for the first game of the series. The Cubs are, we'll just spend some time on the Cubs because we're running low on time. The Cubs are as good of an offensive team as there is in baseball. A really deep lineup right here. I guess Pete Crow Armstrong might be the guy to highlight here, Carver, where he was widely regarded as one of the very best prospects in baseball prior to his debut. He struggled to hit initially, and then even at the start of this year, he was towards the bottom of their lineup, but he has recently taken over as their leadoff guy. And in addition to being like maybe a true 80 grade defender in center field, he is so explosive offensively as well. So to have him, in addition to a lot of veterans behind him, but he is one of those, like, the epitome of the kind of spark plug that you want on top of lineup for not just this year, but probably for the long term in Chicago.
Yeah, the Mets are getting killed for this, and I mean, I understand it. They're just getting destroyed for this trade, but man, this guy had all the potential in the world. It took him a little while, yeah, like you said, Eli, but man, he's been everything that the Cubs, I think, could have hoped for so far. His speed is just insane. I think that's his best tool is how he runs. It's so good. He's going to put pressure on any ball in play. That 29.4 sprint, I mean, that's just crazy. Really, really good. I think that kind of holds down what the ex-Woba says and, everything else. I think he could use to walk a bit more, but I think that's going to come as he gets more tenured in Major League Baseball. He walked okay in minor league baseball, so I think he's going to be fine holding the K rate in check. If he comes by even more power, brings that hard hit rate up that you see there, even a little bit higher as he grows. This is a true talent. And I think that the Cubs are very smart to have him in the leadoff spot because of everything that he does with speed and, just the ability to get on base, even if he's not walking, which is the one thing he's not doing. Even if he's not walking, like I said, he can turn anything into a hit. So, as he gets more tenured with the game, as he gets more used to Major League pitching, as he gets more used to handling Major League pitching, I think those numbers are going to come up. Maybe the strikeout rate will go down even more. That would be amazing. But handles center field well, I think. Really good. Exit velos are fine, especially for a leadoff hitter. If he comes by even more power later in his career, that's going to be amazing. So I think the Cubs found a true hitter, especially at Wrigley Field. The Cubs found a really good hitter, a really good player overall. I think the Mets are sad that they did what they did.
You want to talk about another really good hitter, Carson Kelly? Like, what in the world? Like, what a season. Like, oh my God, he's walking almost 20% of the time, striking out 11% of the time. Like, holy crap. Like, this guy was, I'm pretty sure he was DFA'd at one point. Like, maybe the Diamondbacks or the Tigers. Like he was not a good baseball player up until he signed with the Cubs. Like, and they're rolling out 2 catchers in this lineup, which the Marlins have 3, so it's a little different, but they don't have a third. I'm pretty sure they don't have a third catcher on their roster. Like, it's insane how good he's been. So I felt like he was someone worth highlighting. Kyle Tucker's also been an awesome acquisition for them. If you're a Chicago fan, you really hope they could extend him and keep him in Wrigley for a very long time. He's already at 10 home runs this season. So is Pete Crow Armstrong, like Carver mentioned. Like, this is a really good team. Shout out John Birdie. Shout out Vidal Brujan, 2 former Cubs, 2 former Marlins. Mervis, the former Cub. So we're gonna see who won the trade this weekend so we'll see how that goes.
That's right. Yeah, this is Mervis's return to the organization he spent his career with before getting traded in the offseason.
Yeah. So no, this is an awesome lineup. Like, really good lineup, really fun. Like, even Michael Busch, like he's a fun guy to watch. Striking out a little bit too much, but he's good. Walking 11% of the time. He's a fun guy to watch too. And I mean, if you thought the Marlins were gonna have had trouble containing base runners and getting guys to steal, Pete Crow Armstrong, even though John Birdie's a little older, he's still not a pretty good sprint speed. They're going to make it hell this series. And they have some speed off the bench with Brujan as well, so it won't be easy.
A very quick glance at the Marlins right here. I think the easiest way to sum it up, Nate, is that there's quite a drop off from the Stowers section of the lineup and up, and then everything else from Matt Mervis on down. Mervis, a lot of struggles lately. Derek Hill's in there. We'll see what happens. And you know what? I'll give credit to Liam Hicks. Honestly, I don't know why Hicks is quite this low in this lineup, given the way that he's been hitting lately. Either way, when Norby is resting and when Dane is out right here, and even at the top, honestly, when we've mentioned that X has been inconsistent, Jesus Sanchez hasn't really gotten going, like, the tone has changed around this lineup quite a bit in just the last few series, where this was really surprising, positive aspect of the team for the most part. But at this moment, at least for this particular game, it's concerning, at least to me.
Yeah, for sure. I remember right when Augustine got called up for that Red series, everyone was hot. Otto Lopez was hitting 8th. really rounded out lineup. And like you said, now you have a 7, 8, 9 of Derek Cole. Liam Hitch, like you said, has been better recently. He had 2 homers last week, including a game-tying one on Friday, I believe, Friday or Saturday. But he had a good series in Strada. And then Grant Pauly, who I touched on a couple streams ago. I cannot believe he's still in the big leagues, but I guess he's here by default at this point.
Not very lucky, by the way. He probably would have been optioned if Dane didn't get hurt, in my opinion.
No,
So
yeah,
he got
yeah.
very lucky.
Yeah, he is a lucky guy for that one. But this top 4 is what you really have to look at if you want to look on the bright side here. I mentioned that Kyle Stowers is mini slumping a little bit, and Kyle Seeloff, that man knows how to jinx. Right when he was talking about Stowers struggling, he hits the game tying homer. So I guess if he just keeps talking about Stowers like that, he's going to stay hot. But it's really, you have to rely on X, Jesus, Augustine, and Kyle this series. Maybe Matt Mervis hits a revenge homer, but I'm not going to bank on that one. But I will point out that Augustine did have a lot of hard hit balls in Chicago that Saturday game. 4 of them all over 100 miles an hour. He's just really unlucky. Very Jesus Sanchez-esque, the way he hits the ball extremely hard and still just lines out right to where the outfielders are standing. So maybe he's going to start to get better luck this series.
I know you mentioned the drop off with Stowers down is there, and it's true, but I don't hate the little pop that you have with Hill and Hicks, especially at Wrigley. It's more of a hitter friendly ballpark. Like Hicks has been good recently, like decent, like you'll take it, and we'll see how Hill comes back. But I don't hate it. Like it's not a great lineup by any means. Like I'd much rather see Norby and your usuals in there, but this isn't. Yeah, it's not great, but a couple guys there that we'll see if they get it going in a very hitter friendly environment.
I'll just say one quick positive for the Marlins is that they're actually not facing a top tier Cubs pitching matchup. They got Colin Rea today, for Marlins legend Ben Brown. So you're missing Cade Horton. I mean, obviously the injuries to Steele in the beginning of the year and Shoto. Tyone has been. He got roughed up last start against the Mets, but before that, he has been pretty solid this year. But at least you're avoiding the top tier guys for the Cubs. So there's my optimistic viewpoint for today.
Okay. With that said, last thing remaining, our favorite segment, prediction time.
This is prediction time.
I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I'm really good at this.
Welcome to the final segment of the show. Our staff members, our stream guests, and our valued super subs predict the outcome of each Marlins series. How many games the Marlins will win? Who will be the series MVP for Miami? And in this case, as the season has gone on, Daniel and Kevin, they're tied for the best among our staffers, but Lucas, 1 point edge at the very top of our standings right here. As mentioned before, very stagnant last series because basically everybody got nothing for thinking that the Marlins would somehow top the lowly White Sox. Did not happen. Right here, we expect more variety of predictions against a Cubs team that is a very genuine postseason contender right here. So I will just bring you guys up one at a time. We usually start with Kevin. In this case, let's start with Nate. In this case,
there you go.
Series prediction, and then we'll include Tyler in here as well. So for the first of 3, let's hear what you have in mind, Nate. As soon as I get the background up, now go ahead.
Alrighty, I like a little switch up here. I think the Cubs are going to take 2 out of 3. I had the Marlins sweeping the White Sox, and we saw how that went out. So Cubs take 2 out of 3. Series MVP, I'm going to go with Pete Armstrong. I was hard on him for a little bit. My buddy Jack, shout out Jack, big Cubs fan. He tried to tell me that PCA was never going away, and he was right. So I got PCA taking the reins this time.
Now it's Kevin's turn. Your predictions.
Yeah, I'm with Nate here. Cubs will take 2 out of 3. Maybe the Marlins make it interesting. They did that last year, but they'll lose now, 6 series in a row. And I'm going to go with Kyle Tucker as the MVP. Guy has been awesome this season. And I think he gets it going against probably the weaker side of the Marlins pitching staff.
Special guest, Tyler Baronsky. Let's hear from you.
I'm on a similar note as Kevin. Cubs 2 out of 3. Kyle Tucker, series MVP. One of 3 players with at least 10 home runs and 10 stolen bases this season. PCA, one of the other ones. Go with Kyle Tucker.
Your turn, Alex Carver.
Well, I hate to be a copycat, but I'm gonna say the same as somebody else just did. I'm gonna go with the Cubs taking 2 out of 3, and for all of the reasons that we just said, this guy's one of the fastest guys in the game. He's one of the better young players in the game. He's gonna get a lot of at bats. He's gonna get a lot of chances, especially at a leadoff spot. Pete Armstrong is the MVP.
I'm buried so deep in our prediction time standings that I have to make somewhat of a bold decision here. I'll have the Cubs not only winning the series, but sweeping the series 3 in a row against Miami this week at Wrigley. Series MVP, Dansby Swanson. Really good all-around player. I think he'll be in the lineup for all 3 of those games, so that will help. And there's going to be a lot of opportunities for him to drive in runs, I think, with the guys batting ahead of him in that lineup. So Dansby Swanson, he's been playing against the Marlins for so many years, previously the Braves, now with the Cubs. And I think he's going to go off over these next 3 days.
I thought you were going to pick the Marlins for a second. You really scared me, Eli. I'm not going to lie. You had me.
Yeah.
That would have been even bolder, I guess. But no, not this time. Hopefully at some point, someday soon. But then again, they face the Cubs in the not too distant future, maybe against the Rays in the Citrus series. That'll do it for our stream. Eli Sussman here. Thank you to Tyler for hopping on with us. Kevin Barral, Nate Karsmer, Alex Carver as well. Yeah, we'll be back with another stream on Friday, but a whole lot of content between now and then. Follow us wherever you are on social media, Fish on First, and go to fishonfirst.com as well. Also, remember, pick out our merch, aboutthefans.com, and use the promo code FOF10 to save 10%. Thanks for tuning in, and go Fish.
Fish on First has partnered with About the Fans to launch a merchandise collection. Rep the FOF logo in more Marlins-inspired apparel. Find it all at aboutthefans.com. Enter coupon code FOF10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. FOF10 for a 10% discount.